Hello everybody, welcome to number 27. I'm Jack and I'm here today to talk to you about quite a mad project that somebody has taken on. And the car in the background here actually has some relevance. So this is the Influenza. Recently I found that the head on this was cracked, and that's on top of all sorts of other things which I've already fixed. So it's been a bit troublesome, and a lot of my viewers were saying, I can't believe you can be so positive about it. I would have pulled my hair out by now. And I have to admit that actually, off camera, I'm not always quite as positive as I may appear in the videos. But the other thing which is really useful is sometimes you look at somebody else's project and it just puts into perspective what you're doing with your own car. So in this case, I have a friend on Facebook, Aaron Bunch, and he also had a car that was featured on Smoking Tyre, which was the same car as this, in theory, so it's a 308, but it's got a turbo conversion, I think it is, 570 horsepower, so it's a real monster car. He started posting about this car that he decided to rescue, and it's a Lotus Esprit, and as some of you might remember from some of my earlier videos, I had an Esprit S3 Turbo that I really loved. So I've got a soft spot for Esprits. Kind of same sort of era as this, although this is one of the later Esprits, which was had the Stevens makeover, so it's the softer body style. But they're great cars, and this car in particular is in such a sorry state that I just had to look more into it. So I'm going to have a call with Aaron now on Zoom, and we'll just find out a bit more about this car and how it got into his state and what he's going to do about it as well. And just before then, one last thing, since we're talking about Lotuses, there is obviously my Frankenlease, the Elise which has chassis damage, quite extensive chassis damage, which I'm trying to fix. And many of you have asked in the comments, when are we getting some more info on that? I have found a donor chassis that I'm going to cut bits out of, but it's just taking a long time to make that chassis accessible. It's buried under a load of stuff, basically. I need to be able to get to it to cut off this bit, but I'm hoping maybe next week to do that, and then we'll have some more progress on the Elise. Hey Aaron, can you hear me?
I can.
How you doing?
I'm doing good. So you saw the initial photos I put up. I think I put up just like a little collage of about 4 photos, and that was the seller sent to me. He showed up on the North Texas Lotus group, and he had bought a piece of property, and there was this abandoned Lotus in the back corner of the property, sitting where a barn used to be. And he just wanted to know if anybody wanted it, basically. And several users on there know that I like rescuing these cars. I actually got one about maybe 4 years ago that I rescued from Hurricane Harvey, and it had been underwater. And so they kind of knew that in the area I was the guy to be dumb enough to attempt to save this car. So a few people tagged me in that thread, and I reached out and contacted the owner of the car. He's, from the records I found, he's owned the car since at least 1994. Basically, he had to, sometime around 2000, he got a contract and needed to go to Europe for 2 years. So he had bought the property, and there was a barn on the property. So he thought, well, I'll put the Lotus in the barn. It'll be safer there for 2 years, and then I'm off to Europe. He comes back from Europe, and there was at least one attempt made to go get the car, and the car wouldn't start. And then there was another attempt, I believe, and they figured out there was a problem with the fuel system, and the fuel pumps had jammed up, and he started that. He pulled the fuel pumps off the car.
But so, explain to me something. So you managed to get hold of him. So the person who owns that house, that ranch or whatever it is, he eventually gave you the number of this guy, and you rang this guy and said, "Look, dude, what's the story with the car?" And he said you can have it for like a pretty cheap price, I would assume.
$300.
$300. Wow,
like,
that is
like
amazing.
200 pounds. I mean, you can't say no to a Lotus at that price.
I mean, most people would have probably parted it out. And
yeah, and I just can't do that.
You're actually like such a masochist that you are actually going to fix that thing. And it is, when I first saw the pictures of it, I couldn't believe it. It was like, that's beyond saving. Tell me, mine was a 1984 and it was an S3. So it was the last of the sort of the sharp edge design. And then yours is the Stevens sort of redesign, right? Which I think came out in the 1990s, early 1990s.
It's a 1988 Esprit, which in the US is kind of an oddball year because that's the new Stevens body, like you mentioned. But it also has the 87 model drivetrain.
And so it's the Pretty Woman car, isn't it?
It is.
I'm going to show you what this car can really do. Are you ready?
I am ready.
Hang on.
Okay.
Here we go.
Tell me, so the first attempt that I've seen on Facebook, what happened? Because you basically decided, right, we're going to go, and you got, I think, a friend of yours with a 4x4 and a trailer or something, or it was your 4x4, and then you went, and the guy on the farm had given you some warnings and stuff, but tell us what happened.
Yeah, that's exactly right. My business partner, Scott McClendon, has got a 4x4 Toyota Tundra. And the seller, the owner of the property had told me, well, it's kind of at the back of the property and it's a little wet out there. So, let me know when you're coming. So Scott and I were actually about halfway there. The place is about an hour and a half from where I live. So we were about halfway there when I got a hold of Mike, the property owner. And he said, yeah, I wouldn't even try it. He said, I got stuck out there last weekend in my tractor. And I'm like, okay, that's it. But we're already halfway. So we're like, we're coming anyway. We'll be fine. We've got 4x4. We're immortal. We go out to the property and we walk back to the car, which is the first time I saw the car in person. But the land it's squishy, but it's not like mud puddles. It was really confusing at the time. We thought we would be okay. So we walk back to the truck. We hop in the truck and we're like, all right, let's just carry a little bit of speed and we'll get right through this. And it looked like a tractor pull. I don't know if you've ever seen a tractor pull where they hook the weighted sled to the tractor and then you just try and go as far as you can go.
Coming out here with a car on the trailer?
Man, I don't know. But I think we got to get down there to get turned around. We're spinning like crazy. We went about 53 seconds and we were stuck, absolutely stuck. And we thought, okay, well, let's just unhook the trailer, and we'll just pop the truck. Will pop right out of the rut. So we unhooked the trailer. The truck made it about 2 or 3 inches forward and about 4 inches downward. And we were actually resting on the axles at that point. And Scott was in the truck driving, and I was on the outside of the truck kind of watching. And when I was just so hopeless when I realized we were that deep. And we're in the middle of nowhere. We know no one. Anybody we know is an hour and a half from us at least. There was one dead mesquite tree on the property. It was about maybe 80 feet behind us. And we had plenty of tow straps for the car. And my trailer has a little bitty winch. But that little winch, we hooked back up to the trailer and then used the winch to drag us backwards about 30 feet. We got out of there. And we actually had to abandon the trailer that day. What caused the second attempt to happen is we had I think about 6 or 7 sunny days in a row, but the weather forecast was significant rain starting the next day. So if we didn't go get the trailer and the car then, it reset the weather clock. And this piece of property, it's basically a pond.
I was going to say,
the water is coming up from below. If you find a hole in the ground, you'll see water 3-4 inches down. Do you know what crawdads are?
No. What are they?
It's like a large shrimp.
Oh no way! And they're there in the ground.
There were crawdads on the property. They only grow in like creeks and swamps, but this field was wet enough to actually support crawdads.
So it really is a bit of a swamp then.
Yeah.
What happened? How did you manage to do it on the second attempt?
We talked to Scott's dad and uncle, and they had another truck, another trailer, and a Kubota 4x4 tractor with a little front end loader on it. And so they put that on their trailer, and we all drove out there together. And then we used a little Kubota tractor to go through the field, and it did amazing.
2 trucks, 2 trailers, and a tractor to get the Lotus out.
Yeah. So while they're getting the trailer out, my trailer, which has been stuck in the mud, they got that out with the tractor. And while they're doing that, I'm putting the fresh wheels and tires on the Lotus so that we can hopefully roll it out of there, which took a lot of work too. And we couldn't hook onto the front of the car because there's just nothing down. There's nothing to tow from except for the front suspension, and we were potentially towing at such an angle that it would tear up the front bumper. So we had to tow the car out backwards And so I actually rode on the hood, reaching through the missing windshield to steer the car. It was fun because my brain it was like riding on the back of a fire truck, with the rear steering, and my brain couldn't figure out which way to turn the wheel to go what direction. I kept having to look down at the wheel and see which way it was actually pointing. So by the time we got to the road, I was driving the Lotus backwards pretty well.
So the car in itself, obviously there's some damage and stuff like that to the bodywork, but also, has it been vandalized? Is that why the windscreen and stuff is missing?
I'm not sure if that's damaged. So the car was parked in a barn, but sometime, I think around 2008, a tornado took the barn. And I don't know if that windscreen damage is from the tornado or from local kids vandalizing. I'm pretty sure there's a bullet hole in the right side rear tail light and in one of the front turn signals. So they may have shot out the windows. I really don't know. Luckily, a Lotus Esprit effectively has 3 back windows. There's an interior back window, an engine hatch back window, and then this edition has the flat glass on the back. Okay. Luckily, all 3 of those are intact.
And now you've got it home, and obviously I've seen some of the updates and stuff, but tell me a little bit about what's happened since you got it home.
The first thing we did is we started just cleaning out the car, and there was so much debris and animal stuff, animal skulls, and just in the car. I think we pulled out something like 30, maybe 40 gallons of dirt and debris. I'm working on trying to get the car running, just enough that we can find out what else it needs, find out what seals are leaking, transmission's okay, things like that. Once we get the car running, which I'm optimistic will happen fairly soon. Once we get the car running, we're going to go ahead and pull the engine out, do a full engine out service.
I mean, when you brought it back originally, it was in a pretty horrendous state. I think you said it was like it had barnacles growing from it, and I think that's a really apt way to describe. I mean, honestly, I have rarely seen a car like that. And that was just the exterior, but then the interior, like literally, it had a life of its own. It was quite close to be taken over by nature, right? I mean, it wasn't going to be that long before a tree started coming up through it or something, because I mean, there's moss and stuff, and so the interior is pretty much scrap. But I mean, when you cleaned it, I know you weren't 100% happy with the end result, but I thought it was amazing. The body panels are pretty straight. I mean, there's no major sort of big cracks or holes or anything like that, right?
Right. That's the amazing part of the car, and I think if it was any other car, especially a steel car, you wouldn't be able to save it. The floors would be gone. The frame would be gone. We're pretty lucky so far. There's some scratches on the body, but the actual bodywork, there's no damage. And being a fiberglass car, the floors are good, and then Lotus galvanized that frame. It doesn't have any structural rust that I've seen, but a lot of fasteners are rusty. So I'm going to be using a lot of penetrating lube, and there's a lot of, let me spray this and come back to it tomorrow or next week. You can't really determine what you're going to complete before you complete it. You just kind of have goals for the day, and there may be a rusty bolt that just absolutely stops you. I know, being from the UK, you know exactly what I'm talking about, but it's not normal in Texas to have to deal with this.
So, I mean, is the gel coat cracking or anything like that? Because usually, I mean, that's been out in the Texas sun for years, and normally you would think that would be absolutely trashed, the gel coat and so on.
Yeah, normally you would expect to see, just raw fiberglass fibers sticking out.
But it's okay.
It's okay. The clear coat has failed on the car, and it's come off in a lot of large sections, but the red base coat is still there.
What are your plans? I mean, what are you going to do with it? You're obviously you're going to get it running now, but longer term and everything. What's the long term plan?
If we can keep it cheap enough in the restoration, if we get lucky and we don't spend a ton on it, it's actually going to be my son's first car. He's 13, almost 14 right now, and I think that would be pretty awesome. So.
But can you do almost everything? Can you do the paint? Can you do the interior? Can you do all that stuff yourself?
I can paint, but I would never be profitable at painting because it just takes me so long. But what I will do is I'll prep the car for paint myself by removing the emblems, the lights, and the window trim, the door handles and stuff, and then and we'll probably do the sanding of the clear coat to at least get it where it could be primered and painted, and then we'll send it off to a professional body shop at that point. Mechanically, I'm not worried. I can do everything mechanically, and interior wise, we're going to find out what I can do. I've done a little, like very little interior work. I've installed, somebody sold me pre-made seat covers for MR2, and I put those on, and they looked amazing. But there are no pre-made covers for a Lotus Esprit, and we actually threw the seats away anyway. The frames it had sat. The fiberglass is great that it doesn't rust, but unfortunately, it also holds water really well. So the sliders and the frames on the bottom of the seats were just rusted and gone because they've been sitting in water. You're probably starting to realize that there's no way this car will go back original. That would be just financially impossible. So we're going to make some changes, probably simplify some things. We'll go back with probably a vinyl interior instead of a Connolly leather interior like it originally came with.
One of the main things I think I saw is that so the engine isn't seized, is it?
No. So the first time we went to look at the car, we didn't look at the odometer. There was a tree covering the driver's side of the car. We couldn't get to it. And so we pulled the wheels and tires off, and we took them back to my shop and we're dismounting them. I started looking at them, and they had a date code that was either 88 or 98. And they're a discontinued Goodyear tire. So I thought, it's possible. These are the tires this car came with in 1988. And when we went to see the car on the second trip is when we saw the odometer. It's 7,000. I think it's 7,123 miles. It's a low mileage car. It's gonna be a really fun project. I'm trying to get it cleaned up before I really make my son work on it, because I don't want him to be scarred for life with finding animal skulls on top of his gas tank and stuff like that. Yeah,
I saw the animal skull, and obviously the mouse that came all the way back with you. How far did you have to drive it?
It was 80 miles.
80 miles, so like a couple of hours or something.
Yeah, and the mouse was in for the ride. He had like a deluxe townhome built inside the door. I got that door panel off, and we were face to face.
Eye to eye.
I jumped, and the first thing I did is I ran to my shop and shut the garage door, and ran to my house and shut the garage door. Yeah.
Like a true petrol head, I like the fact that you shut the garage door first, then the house.
Yeah.
Since I had the call with Aaron, he's actually attempted to start the car, so I'm going to pass you straight over to him to find out what happened with that. But in the meantime, just a couple of things. Please do subscribe to his channel. It's at it's ATS Racing, and I'll put the link in the video description as well. Please do subscribe to my channel if you haven't already. And then lastly, some brilliant news. I am right now on my way to cut out that bit of chassis for my own Lotus, the Frankenlees, to finally bring it back to life. It's been taken a lot longer than I would have hoped, but I'm finally on my way, so that's amazing. Now, back over to Aaron, and thank you very much for watching, as always.
All right, we've had quite a few failures today. We got the battery hooked up, and I bypassed the ignition switch, but we still weren't seeing power to the chassis of the car. So there are these two main relays at the front of the car that are activated by the ignition switch. So of course they're made by Lucas, so they don't work. And so what we did is we unbolted the wires off of the relay and actually bolted them to each other, completely bypassing the relay. So as soon as we touch the battery on, it goes to the full ignition switch on setting. And then the starter wire, I'm not sure, it doesn't seem to have continuity between the ignition switch and the starter. So we found a joint in the engine bay, and we're just going to use that to hotwire the starter, or we have been using that. We had a couple of failed attempts. We didn't have the fuel pump on a couple times, and we checked for spark. We definitely have spark. And then I remembered that last week I had left the entire EFI system filled with WD-40. So I loosened up all the fuel injector lines again and purged out the WD-40 until I was getting fresh, beautiful smelling gas. So now we're ready to attempt a start. All right. That's a running car.